Welcome back to our channel, your ultimate source for all the thrilling and heartbreaking updates in Genoa City. Today is a beautiful day to dive deep into the gripping drama of the young and the restless. We have an incredibly emotional, life or death episode to break down for you today, filled with shattering realizations and desperate cries for help. Grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's get right into the intense action. The walls of the Park Motel have witnessed countless tragedies, but none as deeply personal and devastating as the current downward spiral of Nick Newman. The air in the dingy, dimly lit room is thick with the suffocating weight of addiction, despair, and a toxic bond forged in the darkest corners of human vulnerability. Nick, a man who has spent his entire life trying to be the steadfast pillar of the Newman family, has completely surrendered to the numbing embrace of illicit substances. Beside him is Marie Kirkland, a ghost from his tumultuous past, who has become the anchor dragging him further into the abyss. Their shared trauma and mutual desire to escape the crushing realities of their lives have culminated in a terrifying bender that threatens to extinguish both of their futures. The intimacy they shared was not one of love, but of a desperate, drug-fueled need to feel anything other than their own profound pain. As the drugs take full control of their fragile bodies, the illusion of a temporary escape begins to shatter, giving way to a nightmare that will forever alter the trajectory of Nick's life. Will this dingy motel room become the final resting place for the golden boy of the Newman Empire? After the chaotic haze of their physical intimacy, a haunting silence settles over the room. Nick, his mind clouded and his body heavy with the toxic cocktail coursing through his veins, begins to dress himself. He glances over at the bed, where Marie lies motionless, her eyes closed, her breathing seemingly steady. In his impaired state, Nick genuinely believes she has simply succumbed to a deep, peaceful sleep, a temporary reprieve from the demons that haunt her waking hours. He feels a fleeting, misguided sense of affection for the woman who understood his darkness without judgment. A woman who didn't demand him to be the perfect father or the perfect son. Grabbing a piece of cheap motel stationery, Nick scribbles a hasty, regretful note, intending to leave her with a few words of comfort before he attempts to gather the shattered fragments of his own mind and sneak away into the night. The quietness of the room feels almost serene, a stark contrast to the violent storm of addiction that brought them here. But in the world of severe substance abuse, silence is rarely a sign of peace. It is often the chilling prelude to a catastrophic medical emergency. What dark reality is lurking just beneath the surface of Marie's unnerving stillness? As Nick finishes writing the note, an unsettling instinct, a primal warning bell honed by years of survival and family tragedy, pierces through the narcotic fog in his brain. Something is fundamentally wrong. The stillness on the bed is too absolute, the silence too heavy, lacking the soft rhythm of human breath. He approaches Marie, his heart beginning to pound a frantic, terrifying rhythm against his ribs. The dim, flickering motel light casts a ghastly pallor over her face, and as he leans in closer, the blood absolutely freezes in his veins. Marie's lips are taking on a terrifying, cyanotic shade of blue. Her chest is completely still, devoid of the rise and fall of respiration. Panic, raw and unadulterated, violently rips Nick from his drug-induced stupor. He reaches out, his trembling fingers pressing against her neck, desperately searching for the rhythmic thumping of a pulse. There is nothing. The terrifying void under his fingertips sends a shockwave of absolute horror through his entire being. The woman he had just shared an intimate, albeit broken connection with is slipping away into the cold, unforgiving grasp of death right before his eyes. How will Nick navigate the paralyzing terror of holding a dying woman in his arms? Marie, wake up! Nick's voice shatters the silence, a guttural scream of pure desperation that echoes off the peeling wallpaper of the motel room. He shakes her violently by the shoulders, but her body is terrifyingly limp, unresponsive, a tragic testament to the lethal power of the narcotics they had recklessly consumed. The horrifying reality crashes down upon him with the force of a freight train. Marie is overdosing. Her heart has stopped, and she is actively dying. In a fraction of a second, the ghost of his own past near-fatal overdose in his father Victor's office flashes before his eyes. He remembers the suffocating darkness, the feeling of his soul slipping away, and the miraculous intervention that saved him from the brink. Now, he is the only thing standing between Marie and the grave. Adrenaline, fueled by sheer terror and the primal instinct to preserve life, temporarily overrides the heavy drugs in his system. Nick hauls Marie's lifeless body flat onto the center of the mattress, positions his hands over the center of her chest, and begins to perform CPR. 1, 2, 3, 4. He counts the compressions out loud, throwing the entire weight of his desperate soul into each thrust. Will his frantic, untrained efforts be enough to pull Marie back from the precipice of death? The physical exertion is agonizing, but the psychological torture is infinitely worse. With every violent compression, Nick is acutely aware that he is fighting a losing battle against the potent narcotics that have completely shut down Marie's central nervous system. He pinches her nose and breathes into her mouth, desperately trying to force life-giving oxygen into her failing lungs, begging whatever higher power is listening to spare her life. Sweat pours down his face, stinging his eyes, mingling with tears of absolute terror and profound guilt. He knows, with sickening clarity, that he is partially responsible for this nightmare. He allowed the drugs into the room. He partook in the deadly dance that led to this catastrophic moment. If Marie dies on this stained mattress, her blood will forever stain his hands, adding an unbearable weight to the guilt he already carries over the tragic loss of his daughter, Cassie. He pushes harder, his muscles screaming in protest, refusing to surrender to the grim reaper that has come to claim his companion. Can Nick's sheer willpower and desperate chest compressions reverse the fatal, chemical effects of the overdose? Just as the crushing weight of despair threatens to overwhelm him, a miracle occurs in the dim light of the motel room. A sudden, violent gasp erupts from Marie's chest, a horrific, ragged sound of a body fighting its way back to life. Her back arches off the bed as her lungs desperately suck in the stale, chemical-tinged motel air. Her eyes snap open, wide and dilated, filled with a terrifying mixture of confusion, panic, and raw physical agony. Nick collapses backward onto the floor, a sob of profound, overwhelming relief tearing from his throat. He has done it. He has brought her back from the abyss, but the relief is agonizingly short-lived. As Marie's consciousness returns, the reality of her survival washes over her, and it is not met with gratitude, but with devastating, heartbreaking sorrow. The overdose was not just a tragic accident, it was a manifestation of her deep-seated desire to escape a life she finds entirely unbearable. The return to the waking world is a cruel punishment for a woman who thought she had finally found peace in the darkness. How will Marie react to being violently pulled back into a reality she so desperately wanted to leave behind forever? No, why did you do that? Marie chokes out, her voice raspy and weak, yet laced with an undeniable heartbreaking fury that chills Nick to the bone. She weakly pushes against Nick's chest as he tries to comfort her, tears of anger streaming down her pale, sweat-drenched face. You should have let me die. Just let me go, Nick. The words hit Nick like physical blows, shattering any lingering illusion that he had performed a heroic act. He is suddenly confronted with the terrifying depth of Marie's clinical depression and the sinister, suffocating grip of her addiction. She isn't just a victim of a bad batch of drugs, she is a deeply broken woman who actively welcomed the end of her suffering. Nick, still trembling violently from the adrenaline and the lingering effects of the narcotics, realizes that the danger is far from over. Her heart may be beating again, but her life is still hanging by a fragile, fraying thread. He scrambles across the floor for his cell phone, his fingers slipping on the screen as he dials 911. What will happen when Marie realizes he is calling for the emergency medical help she so desperately wants to refuse? The moment Marie realizes Nick is calling emergency services, her despair morphs into a frantic, chaotic panic. Don't! Hang up the phone! They'll call my husband. They'll ruin everything. Leave me alone! She screams, lunging weakly at him, her hands clawing desperately at the device in a bid to stop the call. The physical struggle is pathetic, but deeply tragic. A dying woman fighting her savior to preserve her absolute right to self-destruct. Nick easily overpowers her fragile, trembling frame, holding her back against the mattress with one arm while bringing the phone to his ear. 911. What is your emergency? The dispatcher's calm, clinical voice grounds Nick in the horrifying reality of the situation. I need an ambulance at the Park Motel immediately. A woman. She overdosed. Her heart stopped. I did CPR. She's breathing now, but she's in a really bad way. Please, hurry, Nick pleads, his voice cracking with raw emotion. He turns away from Marie's hateful, tear-filled glare, knowing that earning her eternal hatred is the only way to save her life. Will the paramedics arrive in time to stabilize Marie before her traumatized body gives out completely? The agonizing wait for the ambulance feels like an eternity trapped in a purgatory of their own making. The wail of sirens finally cuts through the quiet night, a jarring, loud intrusion into the isolated hell Nick has created for himself. Red and blue lights pulse through the thin, dirty curtains of the motel room, casting eerie, frantic shadows across the walls. The paramedics burst through the door, their professional efficiency a stark contrast to the chaotic emotional wreckage of the room. They immediately take over, assessing Marie's failing vitals, administering Narcan, and swiftly loading her onto a stretcher. Marie continues to fight them, her weak protests and angry tears ignored, as the medical professionals work relentlessly to stabilize her critical condition. Nick stands frozen in the corner of the room, a ghost in his own life, watching the chaotic scene unfold with wide, traumatized eyes. The paramedics ask him brief, pointed questions about what they took and how long her heart was stopped, their eyes briefly scanning his disheveled appearance. They know exactly what kind of tragic scene this is. As they wheel Marie out the door, the silence that follows is deafening. What profound, life-altering realization will hit Nick now that he is completely alone with the devastating consequences of his actions? The door clicks shut, and Nick is left standing in the center of the devastated motel room. The crumpled bedsheets, the scattered drug paraphernalia, the lingering scent of sweat, fear, and desperation, it is a horrifying monument to his absolute rock bottom. The adrenaline that had fueled his life-saving actions abruptly drains from his body, leaving him hollow, exhausted, and completely broken in spirit. He stumbles toward the bed and collapses onto the edge, the physical and emotional toll of the night crashing down upon him with crushing, unbearable weight. He buries his face in his trembling hands, and the dam finally breaks. Nick Newman, the strong, capable protector of his family, begins to sob uncontrollably. The tears are not just for Marie, but for himself, for the honorable man he used to be, and for the terrifying, selfish monster the addiction has turned him into. He realizes how incredibly close he came to dying in this room, how close he came to leaving his beloved children fatherless, just as he tragically lost Cassie. Is this the moment of profound, painful clarity that will finally force Nick to confront his demons once and for all? The isolation of the motel room amplifies every agonizing thought in Nick's mind. He thinks about Christian, his young son, who is currently under the care of Adam, a man Nick barely trusts, yet a man who is currently vastly more stable than Nick himself. He thinks about his parents, Victor and Nikki, who have spent their entire lives trying to protect him, only for him to end up in a cheap motel, playing a lethal game of Russian roulette with fentanyl. The guilt is a physical pain, a tight, suffocating band constricting his chest, making it hard to draw a breath. He realizes that his addiction is a selfish, destructive beast that devours everything and everyone in its path. Marie's lifeless, blue face will forever be burned into his retinas, a haunting, daily reminder of the lethal consequences of his choices. He knows, with absolute terrifying certainty, that he cannot survive another night like this. If he stays in this room, if he touches the remaining drugs on the nightstand, he will surely die. The choice is stark and immediate. Surrender to the abyss, or reach out for a desperate lifeline. Who can Nick possibly turn to in his darkest hour when he feels entirely unworthy of love? With hands that shake so violently he can barely grip the device, Nick picks up his cell phone from the floor. He scrolls past the missed calls and texts from Victoria and his parents, unable to face their judgment, their anger, or their pity. His thumb hovers over one specific name, the only person he knows who possesses the boundless empathy, the shared history, and the unconditional love required to pull him from this horrific wreckage. Sharon. She has seen him at his absolute best and his terrifying worst. She has battled her own severe demons and survived the darkness. She is his ultimate anchor in a world that is spinning violently out of control. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, Nick presses the call button and brings the phone to his ear. The ringing tone seems to echo in the vast, lonely emptiness of his shattered soul. He prays she will answer, terrified of what he might do to himself if she doesn't pick up. Will Sharon answer the phone in the middle of the night to save the man she has loved for decades? Hello? Sharon's voice, thick with sleep but laced with immediate sharp concern, comes through the speaker. The sound of her voice breaks the last remaining barrier of Nick's emotional defenses. Sharon, he chokes out, a raw, broken whisper that conveys 1,000 words of agonizing pain. Nick, where are you? What's going on? The panic in her voice is palpable. She knows him too well to mistake the tone of his voice for anything other than a severe crisis. I'm in a bad place, Sharon, Nick confesses, the tears flowing freely now, tracking down his face and dripping onto his shirt. I made a mistake. A terrible, unforgivable mistake. Marie, she overdosed. The paramedics just took her away. She almost died, Sharon. Her heart stopped. I almost died. He pauses, struggling to draw oxygen into his lungs through his violent, racking sobs. I can't do this anymore. I need you. Please, I need you to come pick me up. The admission of complete powerlessness is the hardest thing Nick has ever done, but it is also the first genuine step toward his salvation. How will Sharon respond to this desperate, life-altering plea from the shattered father of her children? I'm on my way, Nick. Tell me where you are. Just stay right there, don't move, and don't touch anything. I'm coming to get you, Sharon replies, her voice transforming from sleepy concern to fierce, unwavering determination. As Nick gives her the address of the Park Motel, a tiny, fragile sliver of hope pierces through the suffocating darkness of the room. He is still broken, he is still an addict, and the road ahead will be agonizingly difficult, filled with rehab, family confrontations, and the looming shadow of Matt Clark's overarching conspiracy involving Marie. But in this singular, terrifying moment, Nick Newman has chosen life over death. He has chosen to fight. As he waits for Sharon's headlights to cut through the motel parking lot, he knows that the battle for his soul has only just begun. What terrifying secrets will Sharon uncover about Marie's connection to Matt Clark when they finally reach the hospital, and how will it change the course of Nick's grueling recovery?